Hello and many thanks for joining us on the program. This is People, Politics and Power. I am Imonia Marere. On November 10, 1995, 9 Nigerian environmental activists accused of murder were gruesomely executed by the General Sani Abacha military regime. Their executions sparked international outrage and condemnation, leading to Nigeria's treatment as a pariah state for years. The Ogoni Nine were a group of activists who opposed the operating practices of the Royal Dutch Shell Oil Corporation, otherwise known as simply as Shell. They were led by outspoken author, journalist, television producer, playwright, and environmentalist Ken Saro-Wiwa. Others in that group were Saturday Dube, Nodu Ewo, Daniel Boko, Paul Levera, Felix Nuate, Baribo Bera, Barimen Kiobel, and John Bunier. All of them members of the movement for the survival of the Ogoni people, otherwise known as MOSOP, were accused of masterminding and being involved in the murder of 4 pro-government Ogoni elders. But their real crime was that they spoke out against the environmental pollution and exploitation of the natural resources in their native Ogoniland. MOSOP, which was launched in 1990 as a grassroots community-based political movement, organized peaceful protests against Shell's destruction of their environment. MOSOP argued that Shell's operations have brought no benefits to the indigenes of Ogoniland, describing it as ecological war. MOSOP also expressed the Ogoni people's right to self-determination and greater control over the exploitation of oil that is found on their land. The non-violent campaigns and agitations, however, drew the ire of the then military regime, which sent in a military occupation force that killed over 2,000 people at the peak of the crisis. Saro-Wiwa and his fellow activists had been imprisoned for a year and then tried by a special military tribunal before being executed on November 10, 1995. Since then, the struggle for environmental justice has spread beyond Ogoni to the entire Niger Delta region. But what has changed in Ogoniland 26 years after the death of the Ogoni Nine? In 2011, the United Nations Environmental Program, UNEP, released the first scientific analysis of pollution, which confirmed that Ogoniland had become an ecological disaster. And in 2016, President Buhari launched a $1 billion oil cleanup exercise in the Niger Delta aimed at reversing the damage and restoring the ecosystem. But several years after, little or nothing appeared to have changed. How has the Ogoni struggle impacted environmental policies and practices in the region? How has it enhanced the rights of the Niger Delta peoples to a healthy environment? What is the place of Ken Saro-Wiwa and the 8 other activists in the struggle for social justice? Well, these are the issues we'll be trying to find answers to. So we urge you to join us as we look back and project into the future. 26 years after the execution of the Ogoni Nine. We'll be back with you in a moment. We have guests lined up who will be joining us virtually on the program today. And of course, to kickstart our discussion, we will be bringing you reports from Ogoniland and from River State as the people of Ogoni marked the 26th year anniversary, a day that they have now branded as the Martyrs' Day. Stay with us. All right, let's get to meet our guests on the program today first. Joining us virtually are three of them. First is Mr. Ledun Mite. Ledun Mite is a lawyer and an Ogoni rights activist, president of the movement for the survival of the Ogoni people. He was also, some years back, head of the National Stakeholders Working Group for Nigeria's Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, NETI. Mr. Ledun Mite, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Although I'm not the president of now, I'm not the chairman now.
All right, so former president of MOSOP, and like I said, former head of the National Stakeholders Working Group for Nigeria's Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, NETI. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Mite. We're also joined on the program by Dr. Owens Wiwa. Dr. Wiwa is a medical doctor and a human rights activist, the younger brother of the late Ken Saro-Wiwa. Thank you, Dr. Owens Wiwa, for joining us.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Great. And we are also joined by another activist from the Niger Delta, Mr. Ken Henshaw. He's the executive director, We the People, an NGO working on the environment in the Niger Delta. Mr. Henshaw, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
Great. So, Mr. Mite, let's begin with you. You were one of the activists that was arraigned and tried by the Special Military Tribunal 26 years ago for what was then described by the military junta as the murder of 4 Ogoni Elders. Let's hear from you. What has it been like in the last 26 years, having gone through that ordeal? Mr. Mite.
Well, let me start by saying that for us, the Ogoni people, we have grown to recognize that both the 4 deals and the 9 that were executed are martyrs of struggle. We believe that they were all murdered because by the state for just basically to give us a bloody nose. And it was meant to intimidate maybe the rest of the Niger Delta against protesting against the environmental degradation. 26 years have passed, and even kids that were born then are now adults. And one would have expected that what would have happened is that the state, and indeed the oil companies, will be able to show at least some sense of justice, what we all struggled for our people, and by extension, the rest of the Delta. Because the Ogoni struggle has come to become a metaphor for the places across the Niger Delta, and in fact, the world. But what has happened is that the state has not been able to deal with those fundamental issues for which our martyrs were executed. We are still ignored. And it seems to appear that the attention of government has only been focused on violence, trying not to make the non-violent option which we have been committed to be seen to succeed. And they have not helped to perpetrate violence that we see all over the place. Until the Ogoni struggle, or at least the Ogoni are seen to succeed, we will continue to run under this system that is happening. Our environment is still being degraded, we are still being marginalized, and we are still economically strangulated. That appears to be what has been our situation, sadly, for all this time, in spite of the sacrifices which our heroes made 26 years ago. It's very sad.
Sad indeed, Mr. Miche. You were one of those who went through the ordeal of the trial. How has it impacted you as an individual?
Sorry, I lost the audio.
Yeah, I asked that you were one of those who went through the ordeal of the trial at the Special Military Tribunal. How has that affected you as an individual, and perhaps your world outlook after that?
Personally, I look back, anytime it comes to this time, I am always a little bit emotional. Not only about the fact that this is a period that I should also have been there 26 years ago, but also the fact that this is a time that people paid supreme sacrifices, and therefore I am a little bit emotional about the issues. It affects my sense of justice and it might diminish my faith in this country. Because the country can be so bestial, can be so wicked, that you take people who, because of just what they agitate for justice, then you go through the processes that we went. As I said, both 13 of our heroes have been executed. 2,000 Ogonis have been killed, which translated at that time to about 2% of our population. Anywhere in the world, that should shock the conscience of the country. That is genocide, and it has not happened. 23 communities have completely been obliterated from this earth, and these are some of the things that happen. It makes me start to feel that ultimately, if you are committed to justice, in spite of the challenges, we should continue, if not for anything, to ensure that these 13 martyrs did not die in vain. And that's basically why some of us are still hanging in here, believing that one day, we will be heard and justice will be.
Dr. Owens Wiwa, let me turn to you. How do you remember the events of November 10, 1995? Where were you at the time, and how did you react to the executions at that time?
Thank you very much. November 10, 1995 is it's a day that's indelible in my memory. I was in a telephone booth in Lagos, and somebody who was in the prison, was sort of telling me what was happening, and of course, I was very sad. Of course, I had mixed emotions because I was supposed to be one of those who had been executed. Just to ring the memory, my name was number one about those who were wanted, and it was just a stroke of luck, that I was not caught by Okontimo and the gang of killers at that time. So when the execution happened, I told myself that two things. One, the world must hear about what has happened, the injustice that has happened to the Nine, the injustice that has happened to the Ogoni people. Secondly, I will fight the rest of my life to redress this injustice, to make sure that those that have been killed are exonerated. We have a duty in this country not to cover the injustice that has happened so glaringly in front of the world. We have a responsibility to make sure it doesn't happen to any other set of people. And the only way we can do that is to hold the government accountable. How are we going to hold the government accountable when those who were in government as at that time are either dead or their retirement? Any other government that comes to rule this country must know that it was those people who were in power at that time used the instruments of the state to kill innocent people. So we have that responsibility to clear their name. We also, as Ogoni people, have the responsibility to make sure that what happened to our 4 chiefs is known and there's accountability to their death. Killing innocent people for the death of our 4 chiefs is not accountability. Accountability, as Ledum said, we hold the view that those 4 chiefs were killed by agents of the government. If the government have any contrary facts to that, they should lay it open. We also have the view that the activists who were killed by the government are not criminals. And let me take you back a little bit. The people who were declared wanted by the government as at that time were the lawyers, the doctors, the teachers, the professors. Those are the people that the government declared wanted. They were the educated, non-violent people who were leading the movement, who were leaders of Ogoni. And the intent was clear. The intent was to behead the movement, deprive the movement of its intellectual capital, deprive the movement of its financial support, so that the oil company and the government will continue to destroy the environment and take the money out of our lives. What has changed? 1, there's no oil being taken from Ogoni land. That has not happened since 1993. And we are not going to let that happen until 1, the land is cleaned up. 2, all the injustices that have been committed against the Ogoni people, the killings, the kidnapping, the rape of the women by soldiers who were paid by the oil companies, all those things, we believe that there has to be accountability.
You spoke about clearing the names of all the activists who were executed, who were, in your words, unjustly executed. What have you done in the last 26 years, or how much have you done in the last 26 years to clear their names?
Sorry, I didn't get the questions I didn't get all the questions. The audio is not good.
Okay.
But we have, as we've always done, as Ogonis, try to resolve the injustice by non-violence. We have written to the presidency. We have written to all the presidents we have met. President Obasanjo, who was the president who took over from Abacha, did quite a lot. He did make sure that the remains of the 9 who were executed were returned to the families for a decent burial. That's a decent thing to do. And I believe he was in the process, of trying to, maybe have some monuments or something named after those who were killed. And also in the process of trying to apologize to the people. I don't know if he did that. And also was talking about exoneration with me, before he left office. We have written letters to this present government for that process to continue. We got an acknowledgement of the letter, then everything was mute, quiet, no other response to the letters. What we had recently was something like a pardon. We never asked for a pardon. We cannot pardon innocent people. What we do to innocent people whom the state murdered or imprisoned wrongly or put in prison for a long time is to apologize, reinstate their names by exonerating them and paying them compensation if they want it. That is what is done when the state kills innocent people.
All right, Ken Henshaw, let me turn to you. Comparatively, I mean, you may not have been there in 1995, or at least actively so at that time. But after then, I mean, the younger generation of persons have taken up the struggle in the Niger Delta region as a whole. And like Ledumite said, Ogoni has become a metaphor for the struggle for environmental justice of the Niger Delta people. How well has this gone, Ken?
I'm really sorry I didn't hear much of the question, but I guess you talked about Niger Delta people's fight for environmental justice, especially as it relates to this generation. But first, let me say that I wasn't so young when the events of 1995 happened. For us, events of 1995, November 10th, were like what 9/11 is to the Americans. Everybody remembers where they were when they heard Ken was hung. I know exactly where I was. I know I went ill immediately, and I know I didn't have food for up to 2 days. Because as a young man, at that time, we had already started following the struggle of Ken Saro-Wiwa. We knew, even at that time, that was a fight for ecological justice. That was a fight for environmental justice. That was a struggle for human rights. And just like every activist in the Niger Delta region, either young or old, we never believed that the government of Sani Abacha was going to hang Ken and co. We felt it was just a move to intimidate. But unfortunately, even before the time given for some kind of appeal had elapsed, but had hurriedly hung Ken Saro-Wiwa amidst international condemnation, amidst international appeals and all that. So we remember the event very clearly. And like Ledumite said, and like Dr. Owens-Wiwa said, we have, as much as possible, tried to keep that struggle alive. You know, the Nigerian state is used to the character of you hit the shepherd and the sheep scatters. And the idea was when you kill Ken Saro-Wiwa, the message which he preached, what he stood for as an environmentalist, what he stood for as a justice campaigner will evaporate. Everybody will basically disappear. And so what we have done, even in this generation of activism, is to keep the issues contained in the Ogoni Bill in the front burner of public conversation, in the front burner of public discussion. There is no single year we are not out there, either on January 4th or November 10th, campaigning, for an exoneration for Ken Saro-Wiwa. And let's just say that it is a bit insensitive to hear that the president said he is considering, he's not offering, he's considering a pardon for Ken Saro-Wiwa and the Ogoni 8. It's a bit insulting to the memory of those men. Everybody in Nigeria and even internationally understand that those men were guilty of no crimes. Everybody understands that was a kangaroo military tribunal. Everybody understands that Shell sat in those tribunals said to be keeping a watch on what was going on. Everybody knows that that entire process was a charade, was concocted, and those young men were hung unjustly. What the Ogoni people require, what the people of the Niger Delta require, is a total and complete exoneration of those men, and also an apology to the people of the Niger Delta region and Ogoniland for something that was an outright murder. It was a killing of the people of that place. And let's just say that when Nigeria turned a new chapter in 1999, there were two critical issues, issues of justice confronting the Nigerian nation. There was the June 12 election and the unfortunate death of MK Abiola. There was the issue of Ken Saro-Wiwa and the killing of the Ogoni 8. The matter of June 12 has been resolved. June 12 is now a public holiday. It's now Nigeria's Democracy Day. The Yoruba people have been appeased. The Nigerian people whose mandate was stolen have been appeased. So the question is this: why can't the government take actions to appease the people of the Niger Delta region, and specifically the Ogoni people, for what was clearly a murder of environmental leaders, for nothing else but demanding a better deal from the Nigerian state, demanding sanity in the environment, demanding ecological justice? So we still feel a sense of injustice even up till today, especially so by the actions of the Nigerian government.
So you are suggesting here, Ken, that an apology is not even enough from the Nigerian government. If the Nigerian government decides to apologize today for the murder of the Ogoni Nine, it is not enough. Something more than that ought to happen to appease both the spirit of the Nine and, of course, the feelings, the emotions of the people who were affected.
Well, again, I did not get the question, but the audio is not so good. So I guess I'll just reiterate what I said. That, I mean, Ledu Mite is a lawyer, and I've spoken to countless lawyers. On the 10th, 2 days ago, we had a Zoom meeting where we had lawyers speak about the issue of Ken Saro-Wiwa and the so-called pardon. And we are reiterating that, listen, a pardon is something reserved for people who have been convicted, duly convicted of crimes. A pardon is reserved for people who are guilty of crimes. We have faulted the process, the quasi-judicial process that led to the conviction of the Ogoni Nine and to their hanging. And we are simply saying that a pardon in this instance is not what the people require. Okay? A pardon does not take us in any way nearer to the task of environmental justice. Pardoning the Ogoni Nine is simply saying that the Ogoni Nine were guilty, and therefore, out of your magnanimity, out of your benevolence, you are waving their crimes away. No, that's not what we demand. We need this government to start the first step of reconciling the Ogoni people, of bringing about environmental justice, of even addressing the issues of concern, which is to apologize and start a process leading to the exoneration of the Ogoni Nine. And the matter in Ogoniland, we must be clear, it's not just limited to the Ogoni Nine. There's Ogoni 4, and there are also countless Ogoni people who were raped, who were murdered, who are still on exile till today. If you go to a place in Benin Republic called Wida, there are still Ogonis who live in squalid conditions in exile. After 26 years, they are still too traumatized to come back home. What we saw in the 1990s was the full might of the federal government, headed by Major Paul Okuntimo, unleashed on an ethnic nationality, and that has not been apologized for, and that's what we are demanding.
All right. Well, thank you, Ken. Let's take a very short break, and when we return from that break, we will be bringing you a film report on how the Ogoni people marked November 10, just a few days ago, and of course, they relate their experiences of the pains they are still going through 26 years after the execution of their leaders.
This is Bori, the traditional headquarters of Ogoni ethnic nationality, where a prayer session is being held in honor of the 9 Ogoni heroes who were executed on the 10th of November 1995 by the General Sani Abacha-led federal government. Annually, November 10th for the people of Ogoni is a day for sober reflections, as it reminds them of the tragic end of 9 of their illustrious sons who died fighting for the rights of their people and their environment, which was badly affected as a result of oil exploration activities. 26 years down the line, the people are still trying to find a way out of the quagmire. It is against this backdrop that Ogonis, under the auspices of Ogoni Liberation Initiative, are demanding for justice and restoration for all Ogoni communities.
The oil-bearing communities endorsed the suit initiated by OLI against the Shell Petroleum Development Company and the federal government of Nigeria, which major claim is seeking for the compensation of the Ogoni people for the several years of unpleasant oil and gas exploration and production in Ogoni and the devastation of the Ogoni environment.
Some of them describe the cause championed by the Pan-Ogoni group as patriotic.
This is a very blessed day because we are remembering our heroes who died. And what they died for is what we want to retrieve.
It is only God that remembers us and has taken steps to heal our wound.
What we are fighting for, God will help us to actualize. So I thank God for everything. We are happy.
The group further appealed to all interested groups in Ogoni to unite and form formidable front in engaging the federal government on matters relating to the proposed resumption of oil exploration in Ogoniland.
All right, there you had it. Some Ogoni sons and daughters there expressing their feelings, their emotions on what transpired 26 years ago and what has happened in that time frame. Mr. Ledumite, let me get back to you now. And let me ask, I hope that the audio is better now so that you can hear me very well. Ken Saro-Wiwa once said, and I quote him, "Are more dangerous dead." Now, has that been proven right over the years? Has Ken Saro-Wiwa been vindicated by the events that have followed in the last 26 years?
Well, I didn't quite get the audio, but I'm hearing that how has he been vindicated? Almost everything that was said seems to have been prophetic. One of the last things that Ken said was that he was a man, and him and his colleagues were people of peace. And that what was happening during that charade of the trial was a message, and the government was sending a message. If they did anything to allow the non-violent option that he was committed to succeed, then if you want to kill the non-violent struggle, then you are sending the message to the rest of the peoples of the Niger Delta that non-violence is not the preferred option. It's a paradox today that many people cite our own non-violent stance as the reason why they opted for maybe some form of armed struggle and violence. Because I have confronted several who say, you guys went non-violently and you were killed. So should I wait until I'm being killed? And each day that the government focuses attention to violence, you are sending a message that that is the one that will attract attention. Today, the only times that you see government say anything is because there is violence. And I, in my view, have felt that almost all the crises in this country have started with a shrill voice asking for justice, which is ignored, not only ignored, but suppressed, and sometimes violently suppressed. And what you now see appears to be the reaction to the state violence. And I always have likened, like maybe someone is complaining maybe in a community that we don't have a road. And maybe people don't decide to say, okay, because you don't give us a road, we will protest. Then you go there and visit them with violence. Perhaps maybe some other people feel, before you kill every person, then they cut trees to block the way. If you ultimately remove that tree, you have not dealt with the issue of that road that has been bad in the first place. So what are those issues which we raise? What has government done about it? You have to deal with those issues. Are the Ogoni people not marginalized today? Is our environment cleaned? I've said it over and over again that what I'm seeing around is not clean up or cover up. Are we getting a just and fair proportion of the resources of our land for our own development? Recently, NNPC that has 2 refineries in Ogoniland, the road to there is impassable. Where people used to take about 40 minutes to travel from Port Harcourt to Gori, takes 6 hours, the same time that people travel from Nigeria to Europe. And then NNPC suddenly has found themselves as road construction sponsors. They are constructing roads in the country for 620 billion, and they do not think of where they have 2 refineries. They do not think that those roads should be repaired. And what are you sending? You are sending the thing that perhaps by developing more of the roads where there is violence in the country, that maybe the only way that people can have some development is to go through violence. So Ken and the Ogoni leaders and all of us who have been in this struggle have always maintained that the non-violent option should be made to succeed. And it seems to me that almost all those things have come to pass. It has been vindicated. And I think it is not late in the day for the government of the day to say, look, we've made a mistake. Let's do the right thing. And I keep on saying, the Ogoni struggle has become a metaphor for a larger struggle. which means that if you allow the Ogonis to succeed, its visibility will also give you capital, considerable capital, and public relations capital, that Nigeria is that country that can deal with the issue of justice to its citizens. And then you can sit proudly in the Committee of Nations, because clearly now, I think most parts of the world do not see us as if we are responsible citizens in the Committee of Nations.
All right, Dr. Owens, let's talk about the cleanup exercise. Of course, you recall that in 2011, UNEP, when it released its report, admitted that there was a pollution or an environmental disaster in Ogoniland. And by 2016, when President Muhammadu Buhari came into office a year before, there was this fanfare about launching the cleanup exercise in Ogoniland with a promise of $1 billion for that exercise. Now, 5-6 years down the line, not much is being heard about that cleanup exercise. What exactly is happening in Ogoniland?
Thank you very much. The UNEP report was very clear that what is having the pollution in Ogoniland can be classified as environmental devastation. And it confirmed, what Ken was saying. It confirmed what we have experienced, as people who live there, as farmers, as fishermen, and as practitioners, who saw the impacts of the devastation. It is good, that one of the recommendations of UNEP, was the cleaning of the land. And it is good that $1 billion, had been committed. But let's look into those figures. The figure that UNEP cited that will be needed, to clean the land, $1 billion is small. And in any way, who brought that $1 billion? Ask, how much has Nigeria as a government really committed, has brought into that $1 billion? Not much. The $1 billion is from oil company, is from some European governments. In fact, in Norway, school children were contributing their pocket money to be used to clean the land in Ogoni. School children were donating money to be, and just part of that money is being used by HyPrep. Now, the important thing is this. So there is money. So there is an organization called HyPrep. What is happening on the land? Who are those who will clean the land? If you come into my house and you pollute my house, I will have the responsibility of cleaning. I will clean it best. But if you look at the processes of HyPrep, those who have gotten the contracts, I can put them in three sort of phases. They are people who don't care about Ogoni, people who don't care about pollution. In Ogoni, those who have received any form of contract from HyPrep, most of them were those who supported the killing of Ken and opposed Mossop. Then you have the non-Ogonis who don't care anything about Ogoni. Those are the people that got some contracts, to do some work in Ogoni. So as a result, not much is being done. The effort that is being put in is not visible in the community. We can still not drink our water. Our water level is polluted. We can't. Yes, there has been some greening of the environment in some places because those smokestacks, are no longer there. We don't have drilling, and gas flaring, that is still continuing to pollute, as it was that day. So there has been some natural regeneration. But the sort of cleaning that the UNEP recommended is not being done, or it's not being done. So let me give you one example. The person who is in charge of HyPrep right now is a former official of Shell. That is, this government have appointed a former official of Shell who was responsible for destroying our own environment as the person in charge of cleaning, how would you do it? Don't you have anybody in Ogoni, in the whole of Nigeria, who did not work for share to come and handle that place? I mean, this sort of insults are the things that we continue to receive every day. There is no sensitivity. When you want to appoint somebody to go and take care of an organization who is responsible to cleaning a place, do you get the person who was in an organization that destroyed that place in the first place? No. You get somebody whose track record says this person thinks about the environment, this person thinks about the people who live there, and that is a start. Putting somebody, a shell official, in charge of cleaning Ogoni is an insult to the Ogoni people. That's what I have to say about Hyper. There got to be changes.
Okay, Mr. Henshaw, let's look at how much has changed over time during this period. Has there been a greater respect for the rights of the Ogoni people and of the Niger Delta region generally in terms of their rights, their environmental rights, their rights to livelihood? How much has really happened over this period?
Well, in simple terms, no. There has not been any renewed respect or interest in the rights of the Ogoni people or of the Niger Delta people. The conditions of the 1990s pretty much are the same. The only difference is that the area is no longer militarized by the Rivers State Internal Security Task Force, which was headed by Paul Okuntimo at that time. That's the only difference. But the conditions are pretty much the same. Yeah. So just like Dr. Owen said, the people of Ogoniland are still drinking the very same water which the UNEP report of 2011 said contained benzene 900 times above safe levels. Benzene is a cancer-causing agent. The recommended water sources as part of the UNEP report have still not come to fruition up till now. The people still drink that water that poisons them. It's important to say that life expectancy in Nigeria is 54 years old. But we are aware that in rural areas in the Niger Delta, life expectancy is still about 46, much lower than the national average. We know for a fact that while UNEP has documented the scale of pollution in Ogoniland, a place that oil extraction was stopped in 1993. It has not done the same thing. Neither has the Nigerian government done the same thing for other areas in the Niger Delta where oil has been extracted non-stop for upwards of 60 years. We know for a fact that the level of environmental pollution and degradation is pretty much the same or even worse in those places, and that the government has not found it necessary to carry out an assessment in those places. We know also for a fact that the people of the Niger Delta region have lost their livelihoods. Most of our people are fisher folks and farmer folks. We know that the land for farming has been terribly degraded on account of hydrocarbon pollution. We know for a fact that the water the people fish in are now dead rivers, and the productivity of the fishing enterprise has dwindled almost to zero. We know this for a fact. We also know for a fact that even the recent actions of the government does not show that this government is interested in ameliorating the plight of the people of the Niger Delta region. Recently, the government passed a Petroleum Industry Act where, amongst others, it insisted that gas flaring will continue into the future. Gas is being flared not because we lack the technology to harness it and produce energy, but it is being flared because oil companies have refused to put in place those technologies, and the government has refused to force them. It's also important to note that gas flaring has been an illegal activity in Nigeria since 1979, and the government has continuously shifted the goalposts. Now it has shifted the goalposts to 2030. Before 2030, the flare-out date was 2020, which was promoted very heavily by this government, especially former Minister Ibe Kachuku. So we have seen conditions in the Niger Delta region basically the same We have not seen any reason to believe that this government is interested in healing the ecological wounds of the people of the Niger Delta region. We have not seen any serious attempt at changing the prevailing paradigms in the Niger Delta region. We still see the Niger Delta being treated essentially as an oil field, that place where the Nigerian government extracts valuable resources from. We have not seen any serious move at ensuring that the people who live in this region, who produce the resources which this country lives on, actually get to live and live in a reasonable manner. No, the direct response to your question is that nothing has really changed in the Niger Delta region.
All right. Mr. Ledumite, as we wrap up our discussion, maybe you have the last word here. Let's do some projection into the future. What do you think the future looks like for the Ogoni people and for the oil-producing communities in the Niger Delta? Now, recall that at the beginning of the struggle of the Ogoni people, one of their demands was greater participation in the exploitation of the resources that are found on their land. Do you think that is still achievable?
Well, as all my colleagues, my friends have said, the audio has not been the best. But if I understand the question, let me put it this way. My response would be that I've always asked people who ask me, why is it that the Ogoni people do not think that oil should resume on our land? And I asked back, those places that there is oil that is being produced, what has it been done there that will make Ogoni people think that they are losing? Areas where they are being developed in this country are not necessarily where oil is being produced. So what is the thing that you now think, let me do it, let oil flow on my land, and so that I'll benefit? I come from a community called Kedere that accounts to about 70% of the oil in the country, with 58 oil wells. But it is one of the poorest, where there are no water. So what do the people get? I have always said that there are areas every time of the world, most times people call it a blessing. When I hear people speak, especially from the national headquarters or nation's headquarters, oil is the blessing God gave us. Like one former Venezuelan foreign minister said, he referred to oil as the devil's excreta. For people who have oil on their land, how can we transform their own feeling of oil on their land from devil's excreta to a blessing? And that is the challenge. That's what people should be able to do. So when we are talking about justice, what is it that people will say irreplaceable things, resources are taken from their land and they live in squalor? Until we get to that level, we are not responding. I will say that for all the oil-producing communities in this country, there needs to be that sense that because oil is on my land, at least my life is going a little bit better. Let me also understand exactly the context in which we are saying. People's land have been devastated, the rivers polluted, the means by which traditionally people have to live their lives have been completely destroyed. How do they live in that sort of a situation? Now you have a situation like you mentioned, the Petroleum Industries Act, which now puts what they call 3% for oil host communities, which is defined to mean almost like 3,000 communities in this country. Because they say where pipelines pass is also this, and they should share 3%. I don't know how they are going to share that. Now they say that if in any year there is your pipeline is destroyed, their pipeline is destroyed in your community, the community loses whatever benefit they are supposed to get. Where in the world do you have that sort of vicarious liability in crime? And then you also have in this same country the Solid Minerals Act, that makes sure that if you have solid minerals on your land, your community, the local government, the state, and even the owners of the land are supposed to get some benefit. In fact, they should be partners in that sort of process.
Okay.
And then there must be the oil, the mineral exploiter or the company must enter into a validly legally binding agreement that addresses issues of development, women empowerment, and all those issues.
Mr. Ledumite, we have got to leave it at that for now. Thank you so much for your time and your contributions. We do apologize most sincerely for the audio challenges we had during the program, but I'm sure that we have come through it all. Thank you so much. Mr. Ledumite is a lawyer and an Ogoni rights activist, former president of MOSOP, and former head of the National Stakeholders Working Group for Nigeria's Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, NATI. We were also joined by Dr. Owens Wiwa, who is a medical doctor and a human rights activist. Thank you so much. And of course, Ken Henshaw is the executive director, We the People, an NGO working in the Niger Delta region. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your contributions, and we wish you a very healthy weekend ahead of you. Bye for now.